The beautiful. It's very hard to put that into English. The Italians have the word accompagnare, to accompany someone, but it's closer. It's almost to walk in someone's shoes. And the pastoral ministry of walking with people patiently is the greatest way to lead people out of darkness into light. St. John had it quite clear. The book of Revelation is quite clear. Beautiful stuff here on light and darkness. And that's what we're talking about. Or the early Christians of the end of the first, second century, the letter of Diognetus, there's two paths, the path of darkness and the path of light. And nothing's changed. Now, the second thing, that was voodoo. Voodoo is a localised mishmash of native pagan Afro-religions, homegrown practices, largely channeling and seances, and dancing under the influence of drugs and intoxicants into a trance-like state, etc., and Christianity, all mishmashed up together. It's mainly found and developed mainly, of course, in Haiti, but you find it in some other places. There are milder variations of it back on the west coast of Africa, where some of its roots began. Because some of the spiritist religions in Ghana, etc., some are rather beautiful and a good preparation for Christianity. Others, not so good. Where the devil and it depends, and where the see, one of the problems with certain forms of witchcraft is that the priest or priestess is a wizard or a witch, also called a shaman. There's a whole range of varieties of this kind of thing in different continents. And we even have a bit of it among our indigenous people, and certainly quite a lot of it up in New Guinea. And it's here you see a perversion of priesthood, where priesthood becomes domination and power. And our Christian priesthood can get perverted that way. And we know to our shame what has happened, the scandals based, when people with power hurt little people. Well, but the problem is, we know it's wrong. Our whole faith says it's wrong. We try to cope with it, and we're ashamed of it. But in some cultures, it becomes part of the culture, accepted, and they live under the bondage of the shamans and the witch doctors. And we now have revelations coming out of East Africa of, it was on television recently, how albino children are being slaughtered because their blood and organs are magic. Albino African kids are being hunted down and killed just because some witch doctors have decided this. These are the kind of gross things that come out of voodoo-like cults. Voodoo is really, I suppose, best described as witch doctor, witchcraft cult. You are entering here into the domain of magic. Magic is a broad term. It can cover all sorts of things. The three wise men are called the Magi, the wise ones from the East. And apparently they were astrologers, which would have been astrologers and astronomers in those days. It was all mixed up together. Wasn't a more exact science, and they hadn't cleaned the astrology out. That didn't happen until about the 18th and 19th century. But the word magic has lots of levels of meaning. Is there a good magic? Well, there are wise women in villages in Europe and Africa and all that who make herbal concoctions and practice natural medicine, and it's a thing passed on. And quite a lot of that's harmless. I wouldn't go and say they should be taken out and burnt and all that stuff, you know, really. And there were witch hunts in the Middle Ages, although the worst ones didn't happen under Catholic control, happened under the Protestants after the Reformation, particularly Scotland and Germany and that. And the witch hunts were based largely on hysteria, and a lot of that is depicted in the famous play The Crucible, the famous case of Salem, Massachusetts. And it's very easy to call somebody who's into natural healing or something like that, whether it's true or false or just a game or making money, a witch. So we have to be careful about labelling people. But then I'm afraid when the word witch is used, are there white witches and is there white magic? Personally, I don't think so. Now, I know people who practice this get very angry when priests or bishops like me say it, because I see that once you're into the white magic, you're into something that defines all magic, which is manipulating natural or supernatural, possibly, powers. It's manipulation of nature, which is exactly what the witch doctor is doing. He's also manipulating the psychology of people, control. And some of his stuff will be suggestion. It might even work because you can do a lot by suggesting things to people. But you are manipulating. And again, it's the whole problem we get with New Age when you get into the practitioners controlling other people, pushing them around, which is the rejection of Christ's commandment of love and the freedom of grace. So that's what's gone wrong here. So I do think that all magic in our kind of society tends to end up black magic. Now, that is a controversial thing to say because there are people who, in the Wicca movement, for example, who would hit the roof when you say that. But when you read what they say and the powers they tap into, whether they know it or not, some of them, of course, they don't. They're tapping into the abyss. It's all coming up. It's not good angels that are coming to help them, it's bad ones, put it bluntly. If it's not that, it's delusion. And that's bad for people too.
You were talking about people who thinks they're possessed, but they're going towards schizophrenia and people are possessed.
The differentiation between possession and mental illness is a very difficult field, but we do have a friend of mine is an exorcist overseas in the United Kingdom, and he's a priest, and he does the technical work, particularly the diagnosis. Sometimes he hands the actual exorcism over to others. But most of the cases he gets, and we were at university together many years ago at Oxford, most of the cases are people with mental disabilities, or mental disorders, put it simply, more schizophrenic tendencies, because they hear voices. Because you hear voices doesn't mean there's demons and devils around. Please, that is most unfair to people with schizophrenia. We're learning more about schizophrenia these days than we've ever known. But he's a trained psychologist. He did the famous ruler course in Rome at the Jesuit University, the Gregorianum, and he comes at it as a clinical psychologist. So he does the analysis, the diagnosis. And he says that most cases can be put down to schizophrenia, but they'd still need spiritual discipline and care and love and comfort, as well as medication, whatever modern science can offer. But there are some cases where the schizophrenia is a mask for the real thing, and behind it is the dark side. That's really creepy, he says, when that happens. And he's had to work a bit with that. But then, what was the other area you mentioned? Is schizophrenia, obsession.
People who are actually possessed, how do you...
Well, there are levels of possession too. Real possession's very rare, very, very rare. She's convinced she's possessed. Well, she got reason to be. She told me she was a psychic. Well, sorry, lady, all your own work. I think actually that she's starting to wait. Her conscience is coming up. But with the case of people who think the devil's at them, lights in the room, strange smells, presences and things, and worry and tension, we call this obsession. It's when the thing is coming at you. Possession is when it's actually got within the being, within the body, and it's there. But I must say, obsession is more common than possession. And it can be dealt with by prayer, blessing the house, blessing the person, prayers of deliverance. It doesn't need a full exorcism. And the person also finding out some of the causes, which are usually their own fault. Usually their own fault. They've dabbled in it, and then it all comes out, oh, well, you know, I've been seeing this psychic and she's been telling me all these things. Oh, well, look where you are. Not really living up to your baptism, are you? So these are the levels of it. Also, a place can be infested. The same word we use for rats, infested with rats. The word is also used in the ministry of deliverance of places. And that is rare, but it does happen. And there are places where people just won't go because something is wrong. We can't explain it. We don't know why. But something seems to imprint itself on places. Again, they often get the priests in, and prayers are said to do the sort of antiseptic work. And it's strange, the age-old remedies of blessed water and prayer, which are great. The sacramentals, in our material time-space dimension where we are now, we also have to use material signs and symbols to protect us.